Not talking about risk is risky. The biggest risk at all is that the very people you need to act don't. And if you don't create a culture and a model and a process for openly talking about risk, you're actually causing people to hesitate if you don't bring it up.
Hello, and welcome back to the Scaling Therapist podcast. I'm your host, James Marland. This is the show where I help therapists turn their wisdom into income. Today, I am here with Susan Schramm. She's my special guest, and I got introduced by her by looking at her book launch that is Fast Track Your Big Idea. I'm like, I have big ideas. How do I get it in motion? Sometimes I feel like I'm this stuck all the time, and I don't know why. So she graciously agreed to be on the show. I'm so glad that you're here. Hey, Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And thank you, James, for inviting me into this interesting community. I really appreciate what you're building here.
So you're doing something that I've dreamed of doing. I've wanted to do it for a while, is write a book. But books don't just appear out of nowhere. You have a history, and there's a reason why you're writing this book. Can you tell us a little bit about your history and why you decided to start writing a book about fast tracking your big ideas?
The fun part about a book is writing a book is its own big idea, to be honest, right? But let's start, why would I write this? And the book's called Fast Track Your Big Idea. And the subtitle is Navigate Risk, People to Action, and Avoid Your Strategy Going Off Course. And therein lies some scars that's led me to doing this, because it's funny because you write books because you want to capture something that you want to save for others. That tends to be, some people write books because they just want to get it out of their heads. But a lot of times you put energy into a book because you want to share it. And that has come after a lot of years of spending time launching things. I mean, I started in elementary school launching clubs, and I remember doing a Halloween house in my basement when I was in 8th grade.
Really?
I've always been launching things, but my
Okay.
roles and titles have always changed over the years. But what my sweet spot has always been to help people take big ideas and get other people to join in. So I have had careers in tech where I launched products and services, programs and brands, partnerships, joint ventures, and entirely new companies. I've worked with nonprofits, with churches, with associations. And through all this, a lot of what I learned was, we can get stuff going, but really good ideas get stuck. And it's sad. And you find the same thing?
Definitely. I think that's one of the reasons why I do the podcast and do what I do with Course Creation Studio. Like something I'm fighting against is bad ideas dying on the vine, or dying before bad ideas, good ideas dying before they even have a chance to live. They they have their dreams. There's a lot of energy. Then one day something falls apart.
It's exactly right.
They put it in the desk drawer, and then more work gets put on top of it, and more work gets put on top of it. And instead of putting it in the drawer for a day or a week, it's like a month or 3 months. And then all the good that they could do from that idea it's gone. Like, it's wasted potential. And working with therapists, I know the world needs good therapists. The world needs good people doing good work. And so that's one of the main reasons I'm here. But it's a common experience, though, for these great ideas to just fizzle out for some reason. And it sounded like you had some experience with that. You said you've had some scars, or you've overcome some challenges.
I did some homework. So in many of these cases, I was the lead or helping the leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't expect was the fact that, here's my conclusion: strategies don't usually fail because the ideas are bad, but they fail because people don't take action on them, right? And think about it, therapists know this to their core, right? Therapists know the difference between someone they work with who has aspirations and something's holding them back. And I call that the people side of risk. Well, what's holding them back? And in my own life, I found myself leading these really sometimes big high stakes strategies, and waking up at night with panic attacks and worries and sleepless nights over what if it fails? Right? What if it
Right.
doesn't? What if I make a mistake? And therapists are skilled at helping people think through their fears. Well, that's what often is happening. People without clarity tend to not take action. In fact, even great strategies will fail if people are confused, if they're skeptical, if they're fearful, and if they're not aligned.
Hmm. I love that word clarity because that just looking at my own life, when I don't know the exact right direction, I default to like research. I'll default to like study and then I will know. If I read this book, then I'll know how to do it. If I take this class, then I'll know, then I'll be the leader that I need to be to move this forward. If I just had this program, if I just used, if I just knew the right person, then everything would be easier. Instead of, so when things are unclear, that's my default. I bet there's other defaults for people.
Well, and the lack of clarity creates so much confusion, right? People hesitate when they're not completely clear on why this is good for them, right? So many leaders are launching something because they in their heart know whatever they're trying to achieve is really important to do. But very few great ideas can happen without other people involved. I mean, maybe you're
For
playing
sure.
tiddlywinks, play by yourself. But if you're going to try to change anything in the world, you typically have to enlist others. And at that point, you're dependent on them taking action. And what I've found is a lot of that comes down to just this feeling of risk. It's time for them to take action. They somehow are taking risk. And if they have to do something new that they've never done before, even if it's a new procedure or a new way of a new order of doing things, they will be cautious because they don't know if that's necessarily it's a learning curve that they have to take on. They could look stupid, they could make mistakes, it could be
Mhm.
not important to them compared to other things they're doing. So what I found out is what I call this people side of risk is usually the core issue that causes big ideas to get stuck. And it's something that is always underestimated. When people launch new initiatives, they always talk about their new process or the new product, their new way of doing things, but they haven't fundamentally evaluated the risk of people taking action.
Do you have a good definition for risk? Like I have what I think in my head, but do you like when we're talking about risk, it can be as simple as something like I'm going to lose my parking spot or risk like my job is going to change and I don't know what I'm doing.
Well,
Do
let's
you
play a
have
game. Let's play a game.
Okay, great. I love games.
Okay. So I'm going to say this following word, and you're going to give me the first word that comes to mind.
Okay.
The word is risk. One word.
I thought of the board game Risk. I don't know. We were talking games.
Okay.
Give me
True.
so uh, but that's probably because word association games.
Okay, so that's
Maybe
fine. A board game. Well, that's an interesting angle. I haven't heard that one before, but you're right. It's a board game. The most common reaction people have is danger, right? Risk, danger,
Risk is danger.
right?
Yeah. Oh, I love yeah. Yep.
And there's a lot of, in fact, one of the things I'm doing is testing everybody. So when you say that word, what comes to mind? Now, it could be physical danger. It could be financial danger. You sit down with your financial advisor, and they say, "What's your risk profile?" Right? Well, they're
Yeah,
thinking about, are you willing to lose something? And when you need to lose something, you're trying to protect it. But
for
there's also
sure.
risk of upside. What if you launched a new business or a new course and it completely was successful? And you had so much demand that you weren't ready for it. And suddenly people were unhappy because they didn't get the support that you promised, right? There can be upside risk as well as
I'm working with somebody right now who's experiencing that. If this course goes well, her life's going to change. Like she'll have more free time, but then she'll have more demands on the other thing that she's way more comfortable being a therapist than a course creator. So there's risk there, like to her life, even though it's good.
even though it's good. That's the point. So you asked about my definition of risk. I define risk as uncertainty. You don't know uncertainty about an outcome. You don't sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative, but the risk is the uncertainty. that outcome that you don't know what's going to happen is what causes you often, your brain, to fight or flight. I did find that, I find in the science research that I did, that if your brain doesn't have a plan for the risk, it will kick in gear as fight or flight. If you have some plan for how that might be handled, your brain calms down. And that's what I had when I was going through my own career issues, whether I was driving a thing or getting laid off. I had all those things happen in my life. My dad would always encourage me to say, what's the worst that can happen? And can you live with that? And somehow that became my way of going back to sleep, that I would sit down and settle down to, let's take the worst case scenario and can we live with it? Or let's take the best case scenario and can you be ready for it? And that led me as a person to use that in my own life. What I didn't realize is how that affects teams. And therapists are often solopreneurs, but little by little, they become teams too, right? Sometimes they have a VA or they have different kind of contractors. Sometimes they have partners. And a lot of times when you're trying to achieve something big together, if you haven't together thought through the risks and voiced those possibilities, pros and the positives and negatives, then the team is not able to work together in alignment to get something done. So it isn't that the one person's idea isn't good, but the group can't accomplish it because we haven't anticipated the risk together.
Yeah, that adds a whole new dynamic when you're talking about you're thinking about your own risk. But when you add in more people, it could be all over the place. Like the risk and the loss could be many different things, not just one. So if you don't talk about it, you could be like, why is that person acting so crazy? Why are they blocking my endeavor? Aren't we trying to do the same thing? Well, they could be protecting themselves, like their brain went into fight or flight mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and your clients, so say you're launching an online course or a group program. You could have clients nod politely, but secretly wonder if it's worth it, right? They're
Mhm.
like, yeah, a group program, I don't know if I want to do that, right? So, and referral partners might love the idea, but they don't know how to explain what you do to others, right? They don't want to look stupid. Or maybe your VA says, oh, sure, we're going to do this big thing. But they're thinking, oh my gosh, I only have so much time. Is this going to make it harder for me to get my work done? So there's this tendency of the front facing, oh, sure, we're all in, or worse, silence. Sometimes you'll be with a group and they say, anybody have any concerns? And it's completely silence. That is not good.
Yeah.
Because
Uh,
candidly, they're in their own brains. They may be thinking about it.
when I was leading teams, I always feared the parking lot conversations, the conversations that were not in the group, but they were
Oh,
sharing what was really going on in the parking lot, but only with a select group of people. Yeah, that those when you have the silence, you're like wondering, well, why isn't it safe to talk? Why isn't it even safe to share ideas
so
on those
because you know
things?
what? Not talking about risk is risky. The
Mm,
biggest risk at all is that the very people you need to act don't. And if you don't create a culture and a model and a process for openly talking about risk, you're actually causing people to hesitate if you don't bring it up. And actually, that's what drove when you ask why I wrote the book. I figured out we don't have a very good language for talking about risk, especially when it comes to the people side of risk. We might have financial risk factors or something,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, and there's logs for impact that risk has on the environment. But when it comes to talking about, will people do what they say they're going to do? We don't have very good words about it. So I developed a system I call the DRESC system for impact, which is simply a very logical set of words that help trigger a thinking process about what you're trying to do as a strategy and brings up the questions that may not have surfaced yet. And having spent decades in tech, I was committed to not have one acronym in it. And I wanted to make sure it was relatable to people who had no business background or were from many cultures or ages. So my first question is why? Like, this big idea you got? Why? What problem are we solving?
Mm.
Why? What problem why do we have to solve it now? And if we don't solve it, what's the consequence? This is all part of this why.
Mm-hmm.
These questions, what's the consequence if we solve it? What possibilities can we create? What's the consequence if we don't solve it? And that fleshes out a lot of questions that people can have later when they're going, why are we doing this again? And this isn't working because I'm not talking about how, I'm talking about why. And so many times, whether, again, just back to your audience, where you may be launching something because you want to scale. Why do you want to scale? Why is this good? For whom? And if one alternative to scaling doesn't work, the whole idea isn't wrong. Scaling is a good idea, but you might use another tool. It might be group coaching instead of an online course. It might be hiring a team. It could be lots of different things. But I
Right.
think so the de-risk system for impact is this process. And I have 6 principles, and they are so simple. And I started using them, and the amazing thing, I started using them in my marriage. I used them with my kids. I used them with my family, like the larger extended family. I used it at work, and finally somebody said, "You should write this down." So I have started writing that down, and now that's why I'm coming out with the book, because it really is a practical guide to thinking through the risk of your big idea to ensure that you're proactive about it. Or say you're stuck entirely. It's a way to reboot and go back. Okay. Say you're stuck. What would you like to clarify about your big idea so that you can get back on track?
Very cool. So I had an idea for a topic, but now I'm interested in these 6 questions.
Okay.
So
You
are
want to
you interested in sharing
Oh,
those?
absolutely. And in fact, if your audience wants to send me an email, I can send them a little.
Do you wanna share your email now?
My email is susan.schramm at go-to-market-impact.com. That's
Okay.
my company name.
Go
And
to market impact.
go to
Okay.
market impact, go-to-market-impact.com.
But it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, right.
But really, if this has piqued your interest here, definitely email her and get that list because
Yeah, the
that's
risk is
pretty
it's
cool.
called a de-risk checklist. So what I'm about to say, you can have downloaded.
So Susan, I'm really interested in what you have to say about the 6 questions for the de-risk system for impact. I think that's what we're at. But before I ask that, like, what do you hope? Like, what's your mission or what do you hope for by sharing this with business leaders and people with big ideas?
Well, my goal is truthfully to normalize talking about risk. So it's not seen as a negative, but as a courageous leadership, so that people of all ages and every setting are able to hold conversations about risk in a comfortable way to move ideas forward. And that's how I become a multiplier, so that I can help people with these great ideas about the world, whether that's game-changing ideas or just their little corner of the world could be better, to actually avoid getting stuck by being comfortable talking about risk.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you developed a system or some questions to do that. So can you tell us what the name of it is again and just
Yeah.
take a few minutes to lead us through that?
Yeah, the de-risk system for impact is really just a set of principles that allow you to uncover the hidden risks of your strategy and think through a game plan to align them to manage those risks. So there, as I said, I developed this so that it would be so easily to remember. The first is reconfirm why and why now, right? Many people make the mistake of putting all their focus on the solution, but the fundamentals of why you're doing it, what problem you're solving, for whom, when you've accomplished that, what's the outcome you want to create? And why is it urgent now? During COVID, a lot of people bought a lot of toilet paper, but that doesn't mean the whole world needs toilet paper at that level, right? So this idea of, is what you're doing urgent today in today's environment, will affect the urgency of people to take action. The second one is validate why you. I did some research with funders, both on the for-profit and nonprofit side, and said, what one question do you wish people thought about before they came to you for financing or funding? And they said, I just wish they would step back and say, what is it about you that that is unique, so that we know why I should invest in you, Why wouldn't you just take your energies and go help someone else to accomplish this goal with their ideas? Why do you specifically need to approach this problem? And obviously what that does is it helps everything about how people will be attracted to you and know how to work with you. The third is clarify who. Who needs to take action for this strategy to be successful? And
And it doesn't always have to be you.
well, exactly. And as a solopreneur, the first
Yeah.
person is me, myself, and
How am I gonna get this done? Or who yeah.
right.
How am I going to get this done? That's all that there's a book by Benjamin, oh my word, it's Strategic Coach right here.
Uh, and you know what? I think we underestimate at the end of the day, when you go back to what's the impact you mean on the world? A lot of people actually will have to take action. Your clients will have to take action. Maybe people you tell about who you want as referrals will have to take action. Maybe people on your team who might be able to extend your time more effectively. But a lot of times I think of it as the front stage of the play and the backstage of the play. If you ever worked in a play, you realize there's a lot of people, actors. And so we often immediately think of the backstage, you doing all the work, juggling everything, right? But the front stage could be your community, people who might know about what you do and refer you to other people who need your services. But if you're not clear, once worked with a group of medical people trying to completely create a movement in the healthcare world. And they said they wanted to create a movement. And I said, if we had 10 people, who would have to take action? Your movement will be over time, but like the first 10 people,
Right.
what do you want them to do differently? What that does is if you've thought through that, it helps you focus your time, and it clarifies the from and the to. Because in that, those people might have to take a risk. They might have to take a risk on you. They might have to take a risk by doing something new that they look uncomfortable doing or feel uncomfortable. So that understanding their risks when you think through it helps you get into their mindset and anticipate what they need to take action. So
Mm,
that's three. These are the foundational ones. Why and why
yeah.
now, why you and who, clarify who. The next three really are extending that. And that is rethink how, anticipate what if, and optimize to lead. And those really now turn it towards, okay, how are we going to actually execute all this? And will I be able to adapt? Do I have a good business model? Is the customer journey effective so that people go through and work with you and you take away friction? So those are the hows that you can adapt with. And again, as I said, if your hows have to adapt, stick with your why as to why you're doing it versus thinking you've hit a dead end. Anticipate what if really is de-risking as a rhythm. So many people, maybe they'll do a what if out of their head. They'll say, oh, what if that happens? But very systematically planning for the bumps in the road. And then I actually do something called a pre-mortem versus a post-mortem. And
Mhm.
I talk about this in the book. A pre-mortem helps you have fun at a disaster movie. How will this go wrong in every possible way?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it obviously does is helps you think through what you can handle now or how you'd handle it if that happened. What if you lost your biggest client, right?
Mm.
What if suddenly all the rules change and you could no longer work in this market segment and had to switch? What that does is two things. One, you're more adaptable, but two, you're calmer. If it comes up, you've just given your brain a plan. So you go, oh, that's right. We
Which
walked,
you talked about that in the beginning. If you
right?
have some clarity and you have a plan, your brain doesn't always, like, try to keep you safe, and
Right.
it'll be able to think through those things.
And the last thing is optimize the lead is just being adaptable because what we're finding is that whatever plan you put in place, 100%, it won't work perfectly the way you thought. It's a
No.
guess. Every strategy is a guess. Every big idea is a guess. So if you get down the road, you're comfortable creating your own mindset as an adaptive leader and leader of others when it doesn't quite work to be able to have a group of people around you who can help you adapt and be part of something means it's not only on your shoulders. You're not the shell answer man. Other people also can adapt with you. So those are the ideas that you can find in the book. And again, if you send me an email, I can give you this little quick check to see your next big idea
Great.
helps.
Yeah, I think about the amount of decisions you have to make when driving your car from your house to the grocery store. It's a million little decisions, putting the key in, adjusting the mirrors, looking both ways, turning the wheel a certain degree. If you had to write down everything you did, you wouldn't even leave the parking lot. Like, it's just too many little decisions. But you do know you have a direction, you have clarity. I'm going to the grocery store. I
Mhm.
gotta get in my car. I gotta put my foot on the gas. You got the direction, but you're not paralyzed by all the mini decisions that you have to make throughout the way. And I feel like course creators and people who are launching things, they wanna know, they wanna feel super safe. And how they feel safe, they write lists and they write down everything they're gonna do. And that is just like a mountain of concrete. It doesn't work with launching or doing things or building momentum. Does that s ring true for you as
Oh my
well?
gosh. And you know what? 2 things came to mind while you're talking. One, when you're new at something, you do need clarity over the little steps, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over time, those aren't as scary to you, but they are, like, first time I ever drove a car, my gosh, I put my foot on the gas hard and boom, right out scared the heck out of my family, right? So, you do for someone who's doing something new, do you need to give instruction, but it is true that the devastation that comes with having too hardened a plan means that you feel like you've invested so much, and then
Oh,
and
yes.
it's interesting, I bet you I had to test a lot. About a year ago, I was ready to launch the book, and I thought, "Well, wait a minute. The book is just a book. How do we make sure that it can be used in little bites?" So I started creating a strategy reboot workshop and different workshops to use it because I wanted to understand how would people actually run with it themselves, not just what I was teaching them, but could they use it themselves? And it was a great lesson. It was a great lesson because 50% of what I was giving was not ever heard, and there wasn't always the same 50% depending on the audience, but and the other thing was they only had so much capacity to execute. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so it gave me a good, calm feeling that I may create rich, resources for people, but at the end of the day, even if they just do one thing to create momentum, you can create momentum, which is my whole I work with people to get them back on track to create momentum. And if you do a few things to create momentum, then even if it's different than what you thought, you can go back to do that. And having broader clarity versus the detailed risk. I think sometimes people get so depressed over a course because they harden it too fast. They haven't piloted it in live conversations, and then they get into coding it, and then they
Recording it, so much
wording it.
time and money
So much
recording
time
and
and
editing.
money.
Editing is super expensive.
I know.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think people think and also they're not in front of people. It's risky to be in front of people. It takes
Mm,
and you know what? I found out not everybody likes what you did, but
mm,
it set it up to be, I'm experimenting. I have the mind of a scientist. I want just enough, a minimum viable product that they can get their head around and then listen for feedback. That's how you de-risk a big idea. You get
mm,
just enough of the idea formed with these first 3 questions, and then you test it and live with it and listen and come with a curiosity, not with defensiveness when people tell you they don't like it, but really, tell me more. That kind of thing really helps.
yeah. Wow. Well, this has been we didn't even get to the topic that I wanted to talk about, which is like, why do good ideas fail? And I think you said that's in the book, right?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
you'll come up with I have 30 different ways ideas fail. So the biggest reason is you assume people will take action. So I think
okay, let's leave
really
that
the
as a
assumption,
teaser.
right? Your assumptions are that people will automatically attain action. And
Yeah.
the second big risk is you assume that people are aligned and on one page. That's
Yeah. I remember. All right. I'll end with this. If I keep talking, you got to tell me to stop talking. But I remember like planning something and saying to the room, "Hey, somebody needs to do this." And then it never got done. Delegating to the room, nobody took action. Like nobody was like, "Oh, it's not my responsibility." And I got really mad, but it was also a failure of leadership to clarify what needed to be happening. Anyways, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the book. So let's talk about the book. When is it coming out and where can people find you and get more resources and connect with you?
So today you can go to fasttrackyourBigIdea.com, and that's fast track with two T's, right? Because two words. FasttrackyourBigIdea.com, and there you'll be able to sign up for the launch team. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book right now, you can be part of the launch team and help me spread the word when it comes out. It's currently targeted to come out in mid-October of 2025. And the next thing I'll do is create audio. It'll come out with ebook, a paperback, and a hardback, but then I'm going to do an audiobook afterwards.
Excellent. Well, the link will be in the show notes. And I know I did sign up for the launch team because I'm very interested in the work that you do and just your heart of helping people get unstuck and launch, just get their do the do enable you are enabling people to do their best work. You're a good multiplier. You didn't use that word, but you're doing work that helps other people do their best work. And that's very exciting to me. And it's also one of the big problems of people who want to launch stuff and want to do things and they just get stuck and they like how frustrating. Oh, I'm stuck and I don't know how to get unstuck. These are very good, very simple ways. Any closing thoughts or nuggets to leave with our
Oh.
audience?
So not talking about risk is risky. Just if you just write that down and let yourself in your own mind openly discuss it. And I think at the end of the day, it's the people side of risk that therapists are so good at helping. Just help yourself. So many times your audience is actually serving others so well by helping them confront the scary parts of their lives and worries and dreams. And I'm just encouraging this audience to just apply that to themselves and give yourself the gift of having an approach that considers the things you need to plan for to protect and the upside possibilities, and do that in a calm, constructive way that helps your big idea get traction faster.
Awesome. And can you say the name of the book with the subtitle? I didn't write the subtitle down. I thought that was really important. So can you say the
Yeah.
name of the book and the
So the name
subtitle?
of the book is Fast Track Your Big Idea. And then the subtitle is Navigate Risk, Move People to Action, and Avoid Your Strategy Going Off Course.
Perfect. Susan Schramm, thanks so much for being on the show.
And thank you for allowing me to be part of a fun conversation. I loved what we talked about and we'll continue it. And thank you again for being part of the launch team. You're going to help
Yeah,
me make a difference by reaching more decision makers and leaders.
I loved it too. Very great. Very challenging, actually, conversation. My natural state is to avoid risk at all times.
Well, there you go. That's how we're going to
Okay. Okay. So, listeners, thanks for listening. It's now time to get a little risky and put your mission in motion. See you next time.